Hi there. So today I will be doing my recording of the presentation that I did in class a few weeks back on the poultry industry, in particular egg layers. So I want to go on an overview of this presentation. First, we will be defining what the industry is. I'll give some statistics on egg layers in the United States. We'll go over who egg layers are. We'll go over egg types and their statistics, as well as how they taste. We'll go over who's involved in the industry, pros and cons of the industry. We'll talk about Merrick's disease, and lastly, the sociological and ethical concerns of the industry. And then I'll share my references. So, defining the industry, of course, we have the textbook definition that the poultry industry of egg layers is animals that are defined as poultry, such as chickens that are harvested for eggs. That's pretty straightforward. But of course, defining the industry doesn't just go as the textbook definition. The landscape of the industry is that there's been a steady increase in global egg production. And then something else important to note is that there is a company called Cal-Maine Foods that owns about 20% of global egg production. It has been accused of animal and staff mistreatment, which I believe will become relevant later on in this presentation. Below, I believe you can see this graph that I have of development of global egg production from 2008 to 2018, and you can see a steady rise as I had mentioned previously. So, some statistics. The US produced 113 billion eggs in 2019. This is quite a lot, of course. About 87% of the eggs produced in the US are unfertilized, as opposed to ones that would be fertilized. They would be used for potentially meat production, for more hens to lay eggs, etc. So layers of unfertilized eggs lay at a rate of about 0.81 eggs per day, which is pretty fast rate. But I think it's also important to note this rate has increased approximately by 6% between the years 2010 and 2019. So what does this mean? We're selectively breeding for animals, chickens, in particular, that can lay eggs quickly and efficiently. I want to clarify that I will be talking a lot about chicken egg production, but I'll go into that a little bit later on as well. Lastly, I want to mention that it is a lot of the Midwestern states that are the highest egg producers, such as Iowa, Ohio, Indiana. They make up about a third of the entire egg production in the United States. So, who are egg layers? Of course, chickens are the kings and queens of the egg laying industry. I guess queens. Anyway, so there are other commonly eaten eggs around the world, though, such as ducks, geese, quail, turkey, ostrich. You can see I have this little visualizer below, so you can get a sense of what the sizes of all these eggs look like. I particularly like the ostrich egg in the top left. So chickens, of course, are on top, but the next most common type of egg that is consumed are duck eggs. About 7.63% of eggs that were consumed were duck eggs back in 2009. And I think it's important to note that they lay eggs at pretty comparable rates to chickens. So we're seeing a steady increase in the production of duck eggs over time. So I want to give a little bit of statistics on different types of eggs. So this looks a little bit overwhelming, but I just want to give a little overview of this. So basically, I took these statistics from a paper that I have referenced below, and in it you can see egg weights, shell thickness, yolk percentage, eggshell percentage, how much moisture is in the egg, how much crude protein there is. And basically, the reason I bring this up is that all eggs are very different, and some have different benefits than others. And I want to talk about duck eggs as well, and why they're becoming probably more popular is people are seeing benefits in the fact that they have a higher yolk percentage than chicken eggs. People find that they have a stronger flavor. People like to use them in specific cooking, and people say that there are health benefits to eating them as well. Below, I have a thousand-year egg, which is a duck egg dish that I thought was really cool. Just as a little example. Um, yeah, I think it's also important to note that duck eggs are also stronger than chicken eggs as well. So yeah, lots of pros and cons to each where you can feel free to take a further look. Um, so who's involved in the industry? China is at the top by far regarding both production and consumption. So China produced about 466 billion eggs um, more or less annually. And then after that, the EU, the USA, and India are also large producers and consumers. Something important to note is that the USA owns about an 8% share of the global egg production. However, the company Cow Maine, which is US based, owns about 20% of global egg production. So um, this paints a picture. There is a high stake of egg production in the USA that is cow main owned. There's also a high stake of it globally that is cow main owned. And as this is a company that has had some potential issues with mistreating poultry and staff, let's definitely think about the ethical and sociological consequences of that as we move forward. So, pros and cons of the industry. A lot of places are moving towards cage-free um, chicken enclosures, which is great. Um, Generally, there is less of a carbon footprint in egg production compared to red meat production, which, of course, there still is a carbon footprint. We're not going to ignore that, but it's good to say that it's better. Um, Provides a high yield to farmers, so it's very cost effective for them, and they may not require a lot of space. Cons, however, when chickens are enclosed in a very tight space, there's increased health risks of injury to one another. A big con is, of course, the culling of day-old male chicks, which I will talk about in greater depth later on in this presentation. Um, because a lot of these enclosures are very uh, chickens are in very close proximity to one another, facilitates the spread of avian diseases, which I will also talk about in a little bit. And land degradation tends to occur quite often with these chicken enclosures. So, Merrick's disease. What is Merrick's disease? It's caused by a herpes virus. It causes temporary paralysis of the neck and legs, causes rapid weight loss, nerve damage, can cause tumors. And a statistic that I thought was a little bit vague, but um, I'll tell you reasons why I like it and don't like it. It can affect up to 50% of an entire flock. I saw this statistic and I initially thought this was very bizarre way to make a point. But the more I thought about it, uh, basically, depending on what the proximity of these chickens are to one another, depending on their living conditions, depending on their diet, all these different factors of health, um, it makes sense that there can be such a range as to vaguely say up to 50% of an entire flock can be affected. I think this is still a bad statistic, but or a not great statistic, but I think it's important to it reflects how um, it's a scale of how great this disease can affect them. But anyway, so what led to the spread of this disease? As I said previously, dense living conditions, shorter rearing periods. So rearing period is from 1 day old until they start laying eggs. So shorter rearing periods are associated with more susceptibility to diseases. Also, there are imperfect vaccines that limit symptoms, but they don't limit transmission of the disease. Um, Something I have noticed as a theme throughout many people's presentations, as productivity leads to ideal environments for pathogens. So you have the case of Merrick's disease right here. So productivity of chickens laying eggs has led to avian diseases. Even generally, looking big picture, global warming is creating a good environment for pathogens to become more prevalent. So, sociological and ethical concerns. I hate to leave off on a sorry note, but the culling of one day old male chickens. So meat of males is not easily marketed because um, male chickens do not grow that quickly and are not very cost effective. They also don't lay eggs, so the industry solution is to selectively kill these males. Um, Oftentimes, they are used for animal feed, laboratory use, but more often than not, they are simply disposed of, oftentimes in very unethical ways. So, possible more ethical solution would be to eliminate male embryos prior to hatching via in ovo sexing methods. However, not every institution will do this because there is likely a cost to it. But I wanted to raise awareness just to end off the presentation. Um, so these are my references, and thank you very much for listening.